Mr. General Manager, are there any items received too late to be agendized?
There are none, but I would like to draw the board's attention to a letter that was just passed out before the board meeting from IRWD regarding the item number 9 on the consent calendar. They do not wish to pull that item. However, they do wish that this letter be entered into the record.
Great. Thank you very much. Now is the time for visitor participation to address the board for items that are not on tonight's agenda. And I have one card for that, and that is Mr. Raymond Heimstra. Mr. Heimstra, good evening. Welcome. You'll have 3 minutes to address us on this item.
Good evening, directors. My name is Ray Heimstra. I'm the Associate Director at Orange County Coastkeeper, and I'm here to request that you add something to your future agenda. What I've distributed is a report from the San Diego County Water Authority on the last contract year performance of the Poseidon desalination plant. To say the least, it was a very bad year. So Poseidon was unable to deliver the amount of water that they were required to. In fact, that they delivered so little water that they ended up having to pay a $3.5 million fine to the San Diego County Water Authority. They continue to have a number of violations of their waste discharge permit. This includes exceedances of their toxicity limit. Now, I know that you've heard some, excuses from Poseidon about this before. I brought this up with regional board staff a couple of weeks ago, and they confirmed that there is no mistake in the way they wrote the permit. The permit was written specifically to be able to identify any potential toxins that were being released by the plant. Poseidon has been doing a toxicity analysis. The final report is not in on that, and they have been unable to control that. Additionally, the costs are going up. So the projected costs from the previous contract year to this contract year is up over 9%. So I think if OCWD is going to continue to even consider working with this company, you need to look at their past performance, which we now have. That was actually a request by Director Sheldon in the past. He said, we're not even going to consider this unless we see how this thing is running. We now have a track record. It's not the first 6 months. This is the ongoing thing. We can look at what they're currently doing right now. So I said I'm requesting an agenda item that you look into this and carefully before you even consider continuing to work with this company. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's the only card I have for public comment. That'll bring us to item number 1, which is a public hearing to consider the fiscal year 2018-19 replenishment assessments, basin equity assessment, basin pumping percentage, and production limitation. And with that, I'm going to open the public hearing and turn it over to staff to make a presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. John Kennedy will be presenting these items to the board this evening. John.
Thank you, Mike. So some quick background information. Our District Act requires that we hold a public hearing in April to consider adjustments to the RA, the additional RA, the basin equity assessment, and the basin production percentage. Some additional background information. We reviewed the annual engineer's report that we're required to prepare back on March 21st. And it did show that we have an annual basin overdraft and an accumulated basin overdraft. This is a requirement per the District Act. And that engineer's report provides all the data that's used in your attached resolutions tonight. So there's 4 resolutions before the board. Resolution A is to say that an annual and or accumulated basin overdraft does exist. Resolution B is to levy the replenishment assessment. Resolution C is to levy the additional replenishment assessment. And Resolution D is primarily to establish the basin production percentage and the BEA for each of the producers. So specifically for Resolution A, it's a finding and determination regarding the overdraft, and we've calculated that the average annual overdraft for the immediate past 5 years is 156,000 acre feet, and that calculation is done as it's defined in the District Act. And then secondly, that the groundwater basin's accumulated overdraft as of the last day of the water year, June 30, 2017, is 328,000 acre-feet. Resolution B, the need to levy a replenishment assessment, and we're recommending to establish the replenishment assessment at $231 per acre-foot. That's paid by all groundwater production, and it requires 6 votes of the board. Resolution C is to levy an additional replenishment assessment and a fixed charge replenishment assessment. So we're recommending to establish the additional RA at $231 per acre-feet also. Now that's paid by all non-agricultural production. It requires 8 votes of the board. And then for the fixed charge replenishment assessment, these are for small wells with an opening that's less than 2 inches, and they're on property less than 1 acre, and they pay a one-time annual charge of $462. This shows what a typical producer would pay for groundwater pumping. The green is the replenishment assessment they would pay, $231 per acre-foot, and then they would also pay what's shown in the blue, the additional RA of $231. So a typical producer would pay $462 per acre-foot for groundwater pumping. Resolution D. With Resolution D, we would set the basin production percentage at 77%. It also establishes a basin equity assessment for each producer. It also, we would continue the coastal pumping transfer program. That's where we ask a couple producers along the coast to reduce their pumping, and then we have inland producers pumping an offsetting amount of additional water. Table 1 in the board packet shows what the BEA is for each producer. The average BEA is $539 per acre-foot. And with that, here are the recommendations. I won't read them again, but staff is available to answer any questions.
Okay. I have a number of speakers that would like to address this, so if there's any questions at this time, I'll jump into those. First up would be Stephanie Pacheco with the Sierra Club. Welcome.
Stephanie Pacheco, and I support the original staff recommended BPB, which of course you know is basin production percentage, at 75%, and the replenishment reassessment of $472 per acre-foot. In fact, lowering the BPP when water supplies are plentiful would be an even better cost-saving strategy for Orange County Water District, so as to have a full basin for our next drought rather than having to fill the basin with more expensive water in the future. Speaking of as a member of the Sierra Club Conservation Committee, we support water conservation, and as a homeowner in the Orange County Water District area, I save money by using resources wisely, such as water. Raising the BPP will prevent conservation of water we might need in the future and force producers and thus ratepayers to use more expensive means of making up the lost water supply. It's like not fixing your roof when it rains to save money than having to pay huge costs to repair your floors when the rain seeps through. Even in the months I use water the most on my 1/3 acre property, it would cost me less than a quarter those months to pay for maintaining the BPP of 75%. So please support the original staff recommended BPP of 75% with an RA of $472 per acre foot. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Next up, we'll have Scott Smith. And after Scott, we'll have Dr. Michael Hogan.
Good evening, board members and staff. Last time I was here, you guys had your mission statement up, and I commented on the mission statement. And I noticed that the mission statement's no longer up, so I find that interesting. But I'm here to talk about this, and again, I'm going to recommend also that you guys go with the staff recommendation instead of the options that you have up there. I just went to your website, and you notice on your website it shows that you're only at 45% full on your basin. And so taking more water out of the basin when you're only at 45% does not seem like a very wise choice, and doesn't really align with, I think, the overall board's mission to be able to protect the water supply at a reasonable cost. So again, 45% full, and you're looking at pumping even more groundwater out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Michael Hogan, followed by Ray Heimstra.
Good evening, board members and staff. My name is Dr. Michael Hogan. I'm a resident of Southeast Huntington Beach for 45 years, and I want to make the following statement. Since the OCWD staff's recommendation balances the need for cost-effective basin management with OCWD's existing policies and practices, I support IRWD's position that OCWD charge the groundwater producers the full increase in the replenishment assessment of $27 per acre foot. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ray Heimstra, followed by Debbie Cook.
Good evening again. Ray Heimstra with Orange County Coastkeeper. Orange County Coastkeeper supports the original staff recommendation for the rate increase. We are particularly concerned because we support a loading order, that we call it, for acquiring water of conservation, capture, recycling, followed by all other water acquisitions. As part of this change, they're looking at eliminating the capture program behind Prado Dam. So that's very concerning to us. That's free water. So why would you skip that? So that's a big concern from what I saw on it, and so I just want to bring that to your attention, and I hope that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Debbie Cook. Good evening.
Thanks. First of all, I want to say that I'm a very passionate person. I know I get excited about things, so please don't take it personally. But I'm very troubled by this presentation tonight because I think that staff should have presented their original proposal, and then maybe even looked back at the last 7 or 8 years to see what have you guys done. Not you in particular, because some of you weren't here, but how many times have you actually adopted staff's proposals, and how many times have you gotten so much pushback from the pumpers or whatever, the elected officials, that you've said no? I mean, I think that's why we find ourselves in this position right now, that the basin is overdrafted. The other problem I really have is that the letter that came from the 3 cities was signed by 3 board members. And as a former elected official, I know that you're not supposed to take positions before the public hearing. So it's troubling that happened, and I hope it won't happen again in the future. I know that you guys, yes, you can negotiate where the staff ends up, but you shouldn't be taking I think, such a position prior to that. So, and then of course also, you can't serve 2 masters. So who are you really serving here? You're serving your cities, or are you serving the water district? Because the water district needs money in its water fund, and they need to fill the basin. That's the primary duty of this organization. Fill the basin, manage it appropriately. And I want to note that on the agenda tonight, you guys are eliminating the low-flow toilet conservation program, which was not, I mean, yes, Mr. Marcus mentioned the letter. He didn't say what it was about. And I think it's a little deceiving when you don't tell the public, as rare as we ever come, you don't, kind of get them in the loop just a little bit, so it doesn't look like you're trying to hide the ball. And I calculated that for each unit of water, if you raised it to the $27 proposed, it would cost 6 cents for every unit of water. Now, my husband and I have a very large yard, drought tolerant, but we have lots of fruit trees and vegetable garden, and we used 8 units of water in February. 75% of that came from you, so our bill would have gone up by 36 cents for that 1 month. I just don't think, I know you're sensitive to low income and other reasons, but again, the water component of our bill is a very small fraction of our bill, and we need to pay our way right now. If we take out $300,000, we need to put back $300,000. We pay now or we pay more later. So I really wish you would reconsider and adopt staff's original proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Allison Goldenberg. And that's all the cards I have. If anybody else would like to address us, please identify yourself after Ms. Goldenberg. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, board and staff members. My name is Allison Goldenberg. I live in Huntington Beach, and I believe I also support the original recommendation. I was trying to figure out what you base an average household's usage on, because our house, which is pretty average, we don't have a huge yard, but we use 4 units a month. And I would love to know what you figure as the average user's use and how, because from what I can figure, if you do the whole amount, it would probably cost us, 18 cents? Something like that, which isn't very much. But I would love to be able to find out the answer to that question, because I think we're pretty average. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. That is all the cards I have. So we'll bring it back to the board at this point. We have the 4 separate resolutions that we'll take action on them individually. And I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding Resolution A?
Move Resolution A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I'll need to call a roll call vote as Director Anthony is on the line. So, Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Director Anthony.
I vote yes.
Director Bilodeau.
Yes.
Director Dwayne.
Aye.
Director Green.
Yes.
Director Nguyen. Yes. Director Sarmiento.
Yes.
Director Sheldon is absent. Director Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Director Whitaker.
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 9-0 with Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure on Resolution B?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the vote, please.
Director Anthony.
I vote yes.
Director Bilodeau.
Yes.
Director Dwayne.
Aye.
Director Green.
Yes.
Director Nguyen. Yes. Director Sarmiento.
Yes.
Director Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Director Whitaker.
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 9-0 with Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, next is Resolution C,
So moved.
and I'll second that. Madam,
I'll address this one. I've had a lot of heartburn with this, and I've been persuaded to vote for this for one reason: the fact that our ag people do not get the services that all the rest of our producers get. But I still think it's still touchy, but it's very persuasive that they don't get any of the services except the water that any of our other producers go with. So I can support this at this time.
okay. And Madam Clerk, maybe you can move the microphone over just a little bit, and if I could ask you to call the roll.
Director Anthony.
Votes yes.
Director Bilodeau.
Yes.
Director Dwayne.
Aye.
Director Green.
Yes.
Director Nguyen. Director Sarmiento.
Yes.
Director Sheldon's absent. Director Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Director Whitaker.
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 9-0 with Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, and that brings us to Resolution D. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Director Anthony.
I vote yes.
Director Bilodeau.
Yes.
Director Dwayne.
Aye.
Director Green.
Yes.
Director Nguyen. Director Sarmiento.
Yes.
Director Sheldon is absent. Director Vanderbilt,
Yes.
Director Whitaker,
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 8-1, with Director Wynn voting no and Director Sheldon absent.
Okay. That concludes the public hearing.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Go ahead, Mr. Vanderbilt.
I was going to ask, can we pull item number 9?
Yes. You want to pull item number 9?
I'll move the balance.
Okay, we have the motion on the balance, and we have a second. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Director Anthony,
I vote yes.
Director Bilodeau,
Yes.
Director Dwayne,
Yes.
Director Green,
Yes.
Director Wynn, Director Sarmiento,
Yes.
Director Vanderbilt,
Yes.
Director Whitaker,
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 9-0, Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, that'll bring us to item number 9, which is the termination of the low-flow toilet and showerhead conservation credit program. I'll give it to the general manager and then to Mr. Vanderbilt.
This was a program, I guess it was instituted many, many years ago to give credits for water conservation on low-flow toilets, and that has become a standard now. I don't think you can buy a high-flow toilet. They're more or less mandated on all new construction. So from staff's perspective, we really didn't see the need to have this program any longer.
And did staff consider, based on the questions we've had from the speakers, was there any new information or requests that you might be able to respond to beyond what you mentioned in terms of the staff report?
I don't think it changes the staff recommendation on the item, no.
Okay, and I'd just like to add, this is this program, I've always sort of taken issue with it because, as the general manager mentioned, you can't buy a high-flow toilet or shower head in California. They're illegal to sell. And I've never considered a toilet to be an impulse buy when you walk through Home Depot. I think when you go there to buy a toilet, you're there to buy a toilet, and I don't think a rebate is going to persuade you either way. They're all low-flow toilets. And I know that MODOC, who takes the lead on this program, Joe Berg has done a fantastic job and has pretty much saturated the market with low-flow toilets in terms of the outreach to residents and getting people to turn those over. So I think that this program in that regard has kind of run its course. So I'll be supporting the staff recommendation, and actually I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
And so I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Director Yo.
Yes, I have a question. Looking at the table that shows how much credit that went to the producers, why is IRWD so much higher than the rest of the other producers?
They just have a more aggressive program. They've taken advantage of it more than everyone else.
So how is that measured, John?
Just by the number of units that they install for their residents.
Oh, I see. Okay. And so for the other cities, for example, my city, Buena Park, is it based on a number of residents who have requested for the rebate, or how is that determined?
They just have installed a few units. They haven't installed that many low-flow shower heads or toilets. The city. Now, a resident could just walk in and buy a low-flow unit, but the city has not participated in trying to do more. So the city's been very passive at it.
Oh, so the water district in Irvine has been aggressive in getting developers or new builders to do that, or?
Well, I think it's more just residents, existing residents.
In swapping out their toilets. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Director Anthony,
Yes.
Director Bilodeau,
Yes.
Director Dwayne,
Aye.
Director Green,
Yes.
Director Wynn, Director Sarmiento,
Yes.
Director Vanderbilt,
No.
Director Whitaker,
Yes.
Director Yo.
Yes.
That motion carries 8-1 with Director Vanderbilt voting no and Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, that brings us to item number 20, which is the proposed fiscal year 2018-19 budget.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. CFO Randy Fick will be presenting this item to the board this evening.
Great.
Randy.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, President Bilodeau, members of the board. Here we have a consideration to approve the fiscal 18-19 budget. Here's a calendar that you've seen quite often over the last few months. We've been preparing and presenting the budget for the last 3 months, and I won't go through each of them. But tonight, we just had a public hearing to set the RA and the BPP for fiscal 18-19. And then here we have consideration to approve the fiscal year 18-19 budget. So here's a pie chart we've showed quite a bit. This is the draft budget that was presented on March 7th. And these major components have been reviewed with the board in detail. And this 237.7 was the draft budget. And then we had some changes to that. And the changes to the draft budget include decreasing the capital improvement program by $2.5 million. This is the Prado sediment management project, so we're deferring that. And then decreasing the PAYGO. Originally, we had $8 million of PAYGO in the draft budget. We're reducing that to $4 million to better match the revised CIP budget. And then increasing the water budget. This is to pay for the remaining in-lieu water. The district took 73,000 acre-feet this year. We paid for 60,000 acre-feet of that 73 with the commercial paper program. And then the draft budget contemplated paying 6,500 acre-feet next year and then 6,500 acre-feet the following year. So we're proposing in this budget to pay for the full 13,000 acre-feet that wasn't paid to avoid future med increases. And then increasing the BPP from 75% in the draft budget to 77%. And this allows for another 8,000 acre-feet of pumping versus the draft budget that was earlier proposed. So those are the changes to the draft budget to get us to the RA that was just set. And with that, staff is asking recommendation is to approve the proposed fiscal 18-19 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I'll just note for the record and for the public that this has gone through extensive analysis by the staff and the board over a number of meetings. This may look rushed, but it's a culmination of several months of effort. So we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Mr. President, may I make a request?
Yes.
So in the staff packet, there's one more slide that shows the budget comparison. Is that possible that you could bring that up on the screen? So we...
Referring to this slide?
Yes, thank you. So in terms of many of these areas, again, many of the areas were examined. Some of these areas were and some were not. And so, Mr. President, I was just going to ask staff, because I understood when we had our last Water Issues Committee that there was some general thought about general fund savings, and I don't know where the conversation went after that meeting. And it would just maybe be helpful to summarize that before we go into this action.
The general fund item was discussed the following day at Admin Finance, so it was discussed at committee. But certainly if there's any questions, specific questions that you have, we'd be happy to answer it. I think it went, and I didn't mention it at Admin Finance, but I think Randy in one of his presentations leading up through the budget consideration said that I sat down with all 21 departments heads and went through their general fund line by line. And as a result of that kind of first scrub, before the board even saw it, I took out $400,000 in potential general fund expenditures, which never showed up. Those decreases never showed up because that's what we originally presented to the board. So the numbers have been scrubbed in that respect, and it has gone through committee. I don't know that there were that many comments at the committee level regarding the general fund, although Randy did have a detailed presentation on the general fund at that time. Most of the increases, and I'm going to get it wrong, and Randy's going to correct me, but that's okay. Most of the increases were in salaries. Last year we didn't budget any increases to staff salaries because it was during a negotiation year. So in this coming budget we had to bump those up, in essence almost a 2-year increase into the budget, and that was one of the major increases in the general fund. Randy, maybe you can refresh my memory.
That's accurate.
That's accurate. Were there other items also? There were a couple other minor items, I think.
There were. Water quality projects, the 3 cases were a fairly significant increase.
So there were increases to water quality, and that's because of the work we're doing on North Basin and South Basin, the RIFS. I think what I did mention at the committee level was that the increases that we showed did not take into account potential grant funding that we believe we're going to get through Proposition 1. So I would expect that we would get grant funding, and that in the coming fiscal year we would actually be able to show a savings to budget once having received those funds. So those were the 2 main things. It was the increase in the cost to labor, and also the increase to help fund the RIFS for both North and South Basin.
So if I may ask, just in terms of that $700,000 savings that you were able to...
400. If I said 700, I erred.
Maybe I misheard. Is there a way to, can you summarize those in a sentence or two? Were there any particular costs that you thought could be delayed, or maybe they were?
I think in my initial scrub, typically if there were equipment, if someone was asking to replace a pickup truck or something like that, I may have taken that out and said, no, let's use the equipment that we have. There was a certain amount of travel that was eliminated from different departments. So it would be those types of things, equipment, travel, but keeping intact more or less the programs that I felt were necessary to continue to accomplish the board's goals.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board?
Director Sarmiento also made the point that we had also talked about decreasing the number of the associations we were in. Yes. Although we didn't make a final decision, we were going to send out letters first. So we were looking at a few things, but they wouldn't be reflected here because we hadn't determined whether to completely follow through or not.
Okay. With that, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Director Anthony?
Votes yes.
Director Bilodeau?
Yes.
Director Dwayne?
Aye.
Director Green?
Yes.
Director Wynn? Director Sarmiento?
Yes.
Director Vanderbilt?
Yes.
Director Whitaker?
Yes.
Director Yo?
Yes.
That motion carries 9-0 with Director Sheldon absent.
Okay, that brings us to informational items. Item number 21, the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority activities. Director Whitaker.
Contained in the packet.
Okay, and then item 22 is the Water Resources Summary.
And that information is contained in the packet. Be happy to answer any specific questions any director may have.
Okay. Seeing none at this time, that brings us to committee conference meeting reports. The Communication and Legislative Liaison Committee, Vice Chair Sarmiento.
Mr. President, the information is as contained and reflected in the packet.
Great. And then we have the GDRIS Steering Committee, Director Yo.
The information is contained within the packet, and I just want to highlight that I learned that our GWRS is doing doing really well, and then there is potentially a possibility that we may exceed 103,000 acre-feet of production by the end of the year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike? Without any hiccup, I think we'll be doing, it will be the best year so far. So just want to highlight that.
Are you suggesting we call the Guinness Book people back? No? Okay. The Water Issues Committee, Chair Green.
As contained in the package, but you missed all the drama of the actual meeting.
Oh, my apologies. In the Admin and Finance Issues Committee, Chair Dwayne.
As reported in this evening's board packet.
And are there any reports on committees, conferences, meetings attended at district expense? Hearing none. Verbal reports, President's reports. I have no specific report this evening. General Manager's report.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Are there any director's reports this evening? Seeing none. General Counsel's report.
President Bilodeau, nothing to report, and there's no need for any closed session tonight.
Great. And I'll just note it's great to hear Director Anthony's voice this evening. Appreciate it, Director Anthony.
Glad to be with you.
Excellent. With that, this meeting will be adjourned.